midst of the COVID-19 pandemic. So you might notice a few things around the museum today that are temporary measures we've been putting in place to help keep our visitors and our artifacts safe. The Ice House Museum is located in an original ice house. The building was built in 1921, but there has been an ice house on this site since the 1850s. The building that was here before was made of wood and caught on fire and burned down in 1921, and the community really rallied around the owner, Hugh Smith, and helped him rebuild this ice house very quickly so that it was ready to be filled with ice in the winter of 1922. The building is built of hollow clay tiles reinforced with steel, and is made to hold 6,000 to 8,000 tons of ice. So when you come in the door, if you look behind you, there is a rectangle you can recognize that has been filled in. That is where the elevator was originally used to move the ice from the river into the building. So as you saw from the outside of the building is located right along the Cedar River. The building is also a round building, as you notice. It is built round because that means that there is less surface area, which helps protect the coldness of the ice. And you'll also want to look up at the ceiling when you walk in the building. It is a very impressive ceiling. The ceiling was the last thing put on the building. The building was actually filled with ice first, and then the workers stood on top of the ice to finish the roof. So as you come into the museum, one of the first things you notice is this ice wagon here. So the ice wagon was used to deliver ice from the ice house to homes where they could be used in ice boxes to keep food cold. Everyone would have little cards, such as this one, which they would put where the delivery man could see them, and whatever number was facing up was the number of pounds of ice that the household wanted. We will move on this way. You can see we are going past a hack here. Hacks such as this one were used to carry people and goods to and from the railroad. So the railroad arrived in Cedar Falls in 1861 and was a very important part of the development of this city. And so things could be put in this hack to be moved, including ice, to and from the trains. Back in this area, we can see a model of the ice house. So you can see the elevator there that I was talking about earlier, in the space above where the front door is. This model was done by Jean Lehman, who was a local artist who did many miniature models like this. We'll see a few of these throughout the tour. So moving through this way, we have what would, in a normal year, be one of our hands-on interactives here in the museum, which gives people a chance to try to lift a block of ice. This one is about 160 pounds, and a typical block of ice could be anywhere up to 280, so double this. And even this block is quite difficult to lift for many people. So these were very large, very heavy blocks of ice that were being cut from the river. So here we have our step-by-step guide to cutting the ice. So it's not just as simple as taking a saw and cutting the ice out of the river. They first had to measure it to make sure it was deep enough, anywhere from a minimum of 9 inches thick up to 20 inches thick was what they used when they were cutting. So they would use a drill to make sure that the ice was thick enough before they started. Then you would have to clear the snow off of it, plane it, and score it. So marking out the different blocks of ice, and then they could start cutting it and removing it from the river and bringing it up into the ice house. Once the ice was in the ice house, it was stacked with sawdust in between, The sawdust acts as an insulator to help keep it cold and also to help keep the blocks from sticking together. And through in this section, we talk some about the tools that were used for cutting. So on this side, we have some of the tongs used to pick up the ice blocks and also the saws and different cutting tools there. These things all would have been made by a local blacksmith. So here on the other side, we have a blacksmith shop set up. Many people comment that these look a lot like tools that farmers would have used. So the blacksmith would have been making tools for farmers and the ice harvest and other trades. And many farmers actually spent their winters cutting ice and making a little extra money that way. So here we have a row of ice boxes. So once the delivery person brought the ice in the wagon like we saw earlier, the box of ice could then be placed in the ice boxes. So to keep the food cold, it was a big step in food preservation, especially as industrialization was happening and people were not as easily accessed to fresh food. So they could bring their food in and keep it fresher for longer in their ice boxes. You'll notice that some of these are very small, so you'd have a very small area in which to keep actual food cold. So like this one on the end, the ice would go in the top part and your food would go in the bottom. And some of these are side by side, so you'd have the ice on one side and your food on the other side. As we move down the row, some of these become more like what we think of as a modern refrigerator, and some were even converted to electric then to be used as refrigerators. Really by 1938, Hugh Smith's business here at the Ice House was going downhill because fewer and fewer people were needing ice to keep their food cold as modern refrigerators came into use. And so he actually went out of business, and this building was then used for many years as a boathouse until the 1970s, when it was then converted into a museum. Here we have some cars. So these vehicles are on display. They kind of represent the transition from river transportation and train transportation to the use of more automobiles and the development of roads. And now we will go ahead and head upstairs, where we will explore more about the history of the river and its role in the development of our city. All right, so now we are in the upstairs balcony of the Ice House. We are standing next to a map of the Cedar River watershed. So this shows the area that is fed by the Cedar River. So the river played a very important part in the development of this area. Back here we have a timeline that shows from the earliest development of this area up until the modern day. The Sauk and Fox tribes were some of the first settlers in this area. Then in 1845, we have the arrival of William Sturgis. William Sturgis founded Sturgis Falls, which would then be renamed Cedar Falls. And so then the city continued to develop up until we have now our museum here in the Ice House. So through this area, we have some of the things, the furs and things that you would have found in this area that were part of the early trades and development going on around the Cedar River. As we move through this way, we start to explore a little bit of the early industrialization that took place here in Cedar Falls. The river was a power source for many mills and factories. So we have some examples here of things that were manufactured in this area, including sewing machines. Over here we have the Clean Quick Washer Company. And on this side we have a corn grater. The Ice House Museum is a Silos and Smokestacks National Heritage Area site, and so we like to point out the parts that are tied to agriculture. Of course, along a river with the fertile ground, you would have a lot of agriculture, and farmers then coming into Cedar Falls to utilize the grist mills located here. As we move through this way, we start to explore more of the recreational uses of the river. So the river was very important to our businesses and industries, but also was a source of a lot of fun for many people and still is. So we have boating and camping. Here we have another one of our models. So it shows people when swimming used to be a popular activity here at the river. And of course, can't forget about fishing. And it's not just during the summer months that the river can provide a source of fun. We also have sledding and sleighs and ice skates and all the fun things that come along with an Iowa winter. Of course, once you have the mills and all the industries that developed along the river, you then have other businesses that are opened to help support that activity. So here we have some representation of a few businesses that would have been located in Cedar Falls. And we have another one of our models on this side. This one's of Taylor Veterinary Hospital. You'll also notice on the wall over here we have a walk through yesterday. And this really shows you some of the pictures of what the Ice House Museum used to look like. So from when it first opened in the 1970s through 2008, there was a variety of exhibits in here depicting different businesses and things throughout Cedar Falls. Then in 2008, of course, we had the flood. So the flood did come into the museum and destroyed many of the exhibits. And so again, the community rallied together. It's really a theme that's found throughout our Ice House's history is community support. So the community really came together and helped this museum get cleaned up and redone. So when you come into the museum, you will have to go upstairs or up a ramp because the floor has been raised up past those flood levels from 2008. And it really gave us a chance to refocus the mission and the story that the Ice House tells. So all of the exhibits now focus on the history of the ice harvest and of the Cedar River and its role in the development of our city, as you've seen today. So I hope all of you watching get a chance to come visit in person sometime. There's obviously a lot more things that you can read and learn about, and it really is an impressive building to see in person. So I hope all of you will be able to come visit if you haven't already. And thank you for watching today.